In the quiet residential neighborhood of Newton, a suburb of Boston, early summer sunlight gently illuminated the rhododendrons blooming in Emily Wilson's front yard. The white colonial-style house, though proud of its 80-year history, was impeccably maintained, exuding the elegance of the area's upper class. Since losing her husband 3 years ago, Emily had been living a quiet life here with her 12-year-old son, Jacob. On this Sunday afternoon, Emily was busy preparing lunch in her spacious kitchen. In her island kitchen, equipped with Williams-Sonoma cookware arranged in perfect order, she skillfully prepared lobster Benedict. Jacob, having finished his homework, was relaxing in the living room. His profile, so similar to his father's, made Emily's heart tighten with nostalgia for a moment. The doorbell rang, and Patricia and Lindsay arrived. "Sorry we're late," Lindsay said as she pulled her fiancé Michael in with her. Patricia was dressed in a high-end designer dress, looking more elegant than usual. Her straight posture reflected the refinement cultivated in Boston's high society. "Michael, thank you for coming today," Emily welcomed him warmly. A rising star cardiac surgeon at Massachusetts General Hospital, he acknowledged her with a modest smile. Beside him, Lindsay beamed proudly. She, a nurse, had met Michael during an emergency surgery. As the meal began, conversation naturally turned to wedding preparations for the ceremony 2 weeks away. The grand ballroom at the Four Seasons Hotel Boston. A guest list exceeding 200 people. A $500,000 budget. As the details became more concrete, Emily didn't miss the subtle clouding of Patricia's expression. The scale of the wedding clearly exceeded the family's financial means. "Lindsay, what about your new home?" Patricia suddenly brought up. "We're looking at properties in Beacon Hill." As Lindsay spoke, Patricia nodded with satisfaction, saying, "Yes, that area would be suitable." Everyone knew these properties were beyond the young couple's combined salaries. Emily quietly sipped her tea. She wanted to avoid the topic of her late husband's estate management. Since his death, the fact that she and Jacob were the main inheritors, with Lindsay receiving no inheritance, had cast a subtle shadow over the family. Patricia seemed particularly displeased about the large trust fund set up for Jacob's education. The occasional glances she cast contained obvious dissatisfaction. "Jacob, how are your grades at BBN?" Michael tried to change the subject. "I won the tennis tournament last week," Jacob replied, and while Lindsay smiled kindly at him, Patricia showed no interest. Her attitude was blatant, and it pained Emily's heart. As lunch was ending, Patricia approached Emily, saying, "I need to discuss something about the wedding expenses." Emily keenly sensed the tension in her voice. Jacob, seeming to notice the change in his mother's expression, quietly disappeared to his room. "Actually, about Lindsay's new home." Patricia's voice trembled. Emily felt her spine freeze, anticipating what was coming next in this conversation. 2 weeks until the wedding. Could this tension hold until then? She stood by the window and let out a deep sigh. On the top floor of the Four Seasons Hotel Boston, morning sunlight streamed into the bridal suite overlooking the Back Bay skyline. A pristine Vera Wang dress, carefully selected by the wedding planner, stood proudly before a full-length mirror. The crystal chandelier cast delicate shadows on the dress's lace. 10 a.m. 2 hours until the ceremony. Lindsay, lift your chin a bit, the makeup artist gave detailed instructions while Lindsay Wilson sat nervously in her chair. Beside her, Patricia paced restlessly, her high-end mother-of-the-bride dress swaying elegantly with her movements. "Mother, why don't you sit down?" Emily suggested gently, holding a porcelain cup of chamomile tea. However, Patricia pretended not to hear and walked toward the window. Emily noticed her fingertips trembling slightly. Something had been off about her mother's behavior since morning. In the corner of the room, Jacob stared at his smartphone. Dressed in a navy tuxedo, he looked like a little gentleman. His expression, as the ring bearer responsible for carrying the rings during the ceremony, showed a mix of anxiety and pride. His occasional glances toward his grandmother Patricia seemed to carry a hint of fear. "The hair and makeup will be done soon," the makeup artist announced, when Patricia suddenly declared, "I need to check the rings." Her voice carried an unusual urgency. "I'll check them," Emily offered, but Patricia shook her head. "I'll go." "It's the mother's duty," she said. Emily felt something off about those words. Patricia's voice had an unnatural ring to it, as if reciting prepared lines. 30 minutes later, the room erupted in sudden chaos. The sunlight streaming through the windows seemed to heighten the tension in the room. "The rings are missing." Patricia's scream echoed through the room. "They were right here just now." Her voice reverberated off the walls, amplifying the anxiety. The color drained from Lindsay's face. "What do you mean?" "Search for them." Her face stood out pale against her white dress. The wedding planner responded quickly, calling hotel security. The search of the suite began. Under cushions, in dress boxes, on the dresser scattered with cosmetics. Even in expensive accessory cases, thoroughly but finding nothing. "Jacob, do you know anything about this?" Patricia's voice suddenly turned sharp. There was something in her tone that seemed almost expectant. Emily turned toward her son. Jacob was shaking his head, face pale. "I saw Jacob lurking around the dresser earlier," Patricia's voice carried conviction. Her gaze was as sharp as a hunting dog cornering its prey. "That's not true." "I didn't do anything." Jacob's voice trembled. It was a voice filled with fear, like when his father had been on his deathbed. Then Patricia's eyes caught something. Jacob's tuxedo pocket was slightly bulging. The air in the room seemed to freeze instantly. In that moment, Patricia's hand came down with a sharp sound. Her pearl bracelet caught the light. "Why did you steal the wedding rings?" The sound of the slap rang sharply through the silent room. Jacob's cheek turned bright red. Patricia mercilessly reached into the boy's pocket and pulled out a small jewelry box. The blue velvet box cast an ominous gleam in the morning light. "I didn't do anything. Please believe me." Jacob cried out through tears. But no one listened to his voice. His cries seemed to be absorbed into the luxurious room's ceiling. Emily snapped back to her senses and stood between her son and Patricia. "What are you doing?" Her voice carried the fierceness of a mother protecting her young. But Patricia had already opened the jewelry box. Inside, sure enough, lay the platinum wedding rings. The morning sun caught them, scattering platinum gleams throughout the room. "Look, Emily. See what your son has done." Patricia's voice was ice cold. Behind her eyes lurked something almost triumphant. Lindsay stood frozen in shock. Her white dress glowed blindingly in the morning sun. She looked like a heroine in a tragedy. Emily took the rings with trembling hands. As she held them up to the light, she noticed the engraving inside. These rings, said to be worth $30,000, felt strangely light. At that moment, the room fell silent again. Outside the window, birds could be heard chirping. Emily's expression changed. "This is..." Her eyes shone as if discovering the truth. But her words were interrupted by security staff entering suddenly. "Is there a problem?" A stern-looking uniformed man entered the room, radiating tension. The confusion reached its peak. Patricia began explaining the situation to security staff in an authoritative manner, her voice carrying the dignity of a former prominent church community member. Lindsay collapsed into a chair, seemingly unconcerned about her ruined makeup. Michael had rushed to the room but stood frozen, unable to comprehend the situation. And in the corner of the suite, Jacob trembled with sobs. While embracing her son, Emily desperately considered the meaning of the engraving inside the rings. An hour had passed since they moved to a different room. A heavy atmosphere filled the executive suite's sitting room. Lindsay, still in her wedding dress, sat on the cream-colored sofa, covering her tear-stained face with both hands. Beside her, her fiancé Michael silently comforted her with a hand on her shoulder. "Let me first summarize the situation," the hotel's security manager began in a calm voice. "The wedding rings were discovered in young Mr. Wilson's pocket," he continued, checking his notes. "However, Jacob denies any involvement." "Denies?" "The evidence is clear," Patricia shot back sharply. She stood by the window, looking down at the Back Bay skyline. Her posture was full of dignity, like a witness testifying in court. However, she couldn't completely hide the trembling of her hands. In the corner of the room, Emily held her son. Jacob's cheek still bore the mark of Patricia's slap. "Once more, Jacob. Tell us the truth," Emily said, gently counseling him. "I really didn't do anything." Jacob's voice trembled, but his eyes showed clear conviction. "I don't know anything about the rings." "Stop lying." Patricia turned around. "The evidence is clear. They were found in your pocket." "But something's not right," Emily said quietly. Her observant eye, honed as a real estate agent, had caught something amiss. "Are these rings real?" "What are you saying?" Patricia's voice rose. "Those are $30,000 Cartier rings I selected." Emily stood and walked to the window. She held the rings up to the sunlight. The platinum cast rainbow reflections around the room. But the engraving inside. Just then, Michael suddenly leaned forward. His sharp surgeon's eye had caught something. "Excuse me," he took the rings from Emily and pulled out his reading glasses. With the precise fingers he used for surgical instruments, he carefully examined the rings. "This is..." Michael's expression changed. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. "The security camera footage is ready," a young staff member announced. A large monitor was brought in, and the surveillance footage began playing. Lindsay looked up. Her white dress cast an unnatural glow under the fluorescent lights. The footage showed the bridal suite around 9:30 a.m. Patricia entered the room and moved toward the dresser. And then... "Wait," Emily spoke up. "Play that part again." The footage rewound. Patricia's unnatural movements were clearly captured. "Mother," Lindsay's voice trembled. "What did you..." Patricia's face turned pale. This is a misunderstanding." But her voice had lost its certainty. Emily took the rings again. This time, she examined the inside more carefully. Checking the engraving, testing the weight, observing how they caught the light. And then... "These aren't real Cartier rings." The room's atmosphere froze instantly. "Emily, what are you saying?" Patricia's voice rose. "I chose those rings. I spent $30,000. "No," Michael said in a calm voice. "These are imitations. My mother is a jeweler, so I can tell immediately. Real Cartier engravings are more delicate." Lindsay stood up. Her white dress swayed in the light. "What does this mean?" Patricia's lips trembled. I. Just then, Emily's phone rang. It was from a pawn shop in downtown Boston. Emily put it on speaker. The voice that broke the silence in the room: "Regarding Mrs. Wilson's pawned rings, we need to confirm the $20,000 arrangement for today." Patricia suddenly interrupted the call. "Stop." Her voice had completely lost its previous dignity. She collapsed there, still wearing her designer two-piece suit. Lindsay tried to rush to her, but stumbled. Her pure white wedding dress caught the afternoon light, gleaming brilliantly for a moment. Emily approached Patricia slowly, letting out a deep sigh. "Would you please tell us everything?" Her voice carried no accusation, only warmth and understanding. "I had no choice," Patricia's voice trembled. "I needed the down payment for Lindsay's new house." She looked up. Her eyes revealed years of hidden anguish. "I thought I could pawn the $30,000 rings for $20,000 and replace them with fakes. I thought I could switch them back after the ceremony." "So you tried to frame Jacob?" Emily's voice turned cold. "No," Patricia desperately denied. "I put them in his pocket temporarily, hoping it would trigger a review of the estate management." Her words faded into the room's air. Michael quietly stood up. "I understand," he said, touching his engagement ring. "I've seen it at my family's jewelry store. How attachment to valuable things can sometimes drive people to desperate measures." "But mother," Lindsay's voice trembled. Why didn't you talk to me about it? Patricia looked up. Her makeup was smeared, tear tracks on her cheeks. I thought it was for your happiness. A prime location in Beacon Hill, a lifestyle that wouldn't be inferior to Michael's family. Nobody asked for that, Michael said gently. What I love is Lindsay as a person, not where she lives or what she owns. At those words, Patricia's shoulders shook violently. Grandma, Jacob suddenly spoke up. The boy who had been quietly watching from the corner slowly approached Patricia. Do you hate me? Patricia caught her breath. Jacob. She stumbled over her words. The mark of her slap was still visible on the boy's cheek before her. I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. Emily placed a hand on her son's shoulder. Mother, the real issue isn't about the rings, is it? Patricia pressed a handkerchief to her eyes. Everything started going wrong from that day. Her voice was thin but carried definite emotion. When my dear son died. It's been 3 years since father passed, Emily said quietly. I know you were unhappy with the estate distribution. But that was my husband's wish. That's not it. Patricia cried out. It's not about the inheritance. She forced out the words. I was lonely. I invested everything in Lindsay. Her wedding became my reason for living. Lindsay slowly knelt before her mother. Mom, I'm right here. But I'm not a child anymore. I need to live my life in my own way. I know, Patricia's voice gradually regained composure. But I was scared of losing you. Nobody is losing anyone, Emily said. We're family. Even if we choose different paths, that bond doesn't change. Michael stood and walked to the window. I have a suggestion, he said in the same calm voice he used when delivering difficult decisions to patients' families. Let's postpone the ceremony. Today, we'll let Lindsay's friends enjoy it as just a party. The real ceremony can happen when we're truly ready to be a family. That's perfect, Lindsay nodded. There was no more hesitation in her eyes. Then what about these? Emily held up the fake rings. Let's return them, Patricia said quietly. I'll tell everything honestly. To the pawn shop, to the police. That won't be necessary, Michael interrupted. Let my parents' jewelry store provide new rings. As a symbol of the Wilson family's new bond. But the money. Patricia began. Mother, Emily said gently. Here's my proposal. Let's sell the vacation house my husband left. We can use that for Lindsay's down payment. Jacob's education fund will remain untouched. New tears welled in Patricia's eyes. This time, they were tears of gratitude. Grandma, Jacob took Patricia's hand. Come watch my tennis match this Sunday. At the BBN courts, starting at 2 p.m. With those words, the room's atmosphere transformed. Like a taut string slowly unraveling. A family story was about to turn to a new page. 1 month later, on a Sunday morning, the bells of St. Paul's Church rang softly. Through the morning mist, light filtered through stained glass windows gently illuminated the pure white aisle. Lindsay touched her father's heirloom sapphire necklace. "Ready?" Emily asked while making final adjustments to her sister's hair. This time, there was a more natural smile. In the corner of the dressing room, Patricia sat quietly. Over the past month, she had been receiving counseling at McLean Hospital. The phrase "loss and attachment" had slowly begun to unravel what lay deep in her heart. "Mom," Lindsay called out. "Will you help me with my veil?" Patricia slowly stood up. The new wedding rings gleamed in her hand. Made specially at Michael's parents' jewelry store, they featured a Mobius strip design on the inside of the platinum bands, symbolizing the eternal bond of family. "Lindsay, you look beautiful," Patricia's hands trembled slightly. But now it wasn't from anxiety, but from pure emotion. "I'm beginning to understand, little by little. That happiness isn't about appearances, but what's in our hearts." The door opened softly, and Jacob peeked in. His navy tuxedo looked more dignified than ever, with the medal he won at the BBN tennis tournament discreetly gleaming on his chest. Patricia had been there to cheer him on at last week's match. "Grandma, it's almost time." Jacob's voice held no more fear. Emily stood by the window, looking outside. In front of the church gathered colleagues from Massachusetts General Hospital, parents from BBN, and most importantly, family friends who had known them for years. This time, they came bearing genuine blessings, not just for show or appearances. Just before the ceremony began, Patricia embraced Lindsay and Emily. "I'm sorry." "And thank you." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "You are my pride." Michael's parents appeared in the dressing room. Mrs. Brown smiled kindly at Lindsay. "Don't worry about the Beacon Hill property. We just want you to be happy wherever you choose to live." Their new home had been decided on, a quiet residential street in Jamaica Plain, not far from Emily's house. It was a small house with a garden, chosen together by Lindsay and Michael. The funds from the sold vacation house would help with the down payment. "Is everyone ready?" The wedding planner began final checks. Lindsay took a deep breath. "I'm so happy right now," she said, looking around at her family. "This is the wedding I wanted. Not one of pretense and decoration, but one surrounded by real love." Patricia nodded quietly at her daughter's words. A new light shone on her profile. The counseling would continue. But for her, it had become a journey to rediscover herself. Every Thursday after her session, she would invariably stop by Emily's house, and 3 generations would share dinner together. This new routine had been healing her heart. "Let's go." Emily opened the door. The pipe organ music had begun flowing through the hallway. Jacob proudly stood straight, carefully holding the precious rings in both hands. This time, real rings symbolized real love. On the aisle, Michael waited with a warm smile for his bride. What reflected in his eyes was not the white dress, but Lindsay herself as a person. Sunlight filled the church, and the stained glass painted rainbow colors on the floor. A new family story was about to take its first sure step forward. After the ceremony, Patricia sat alone on a bench in the church garden. The spring sunlight illuminated the blooming magnolias. She quietly closed her eyes and offered a prayer to her late husband. "Can you see us? We've finally become a real family." A gentle breeze blew, scattering magnolia petals. One petal softly landed on Patricia's lap, like a blessing from heaven.